Hey, what's up guys? This is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. Today, I've got another podcast style talk with my friend Boss from FlightCoach. Boss is a YouTuber and he makes all kinds of great videos kind of on the same vein of what I'm doing, and he found me on YouTube, reached out, and in this episode we talk a lot about the culture of paragliding in all different aspects. We go into a lot of different very interesting things, so I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys like this channel, consider supporting me. I need some help with this thing. Become a patron on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Ari in the Air, or make a donation at paypal.me/Ari in the Air. I really appreciate those. Got lots of new videos coming up. I'm working really hard, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching and enjoy this talk with Boss from FlightCoach.
See ya.
Boss, how you doing, man?
Great. I'm doing great, bro.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm great. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Finally, I'm stoked to talk to you. I know that we both have been making YouTube content in the paragliding world, which is a pretty small world, the YouTube paragliding world. And there's some subtle ways that our content kind of overlaps. And I think that the things that I've been talking about and the sensitivities that it refers to are things that you're kind of tuned into as well and are trying to help people with. So I'm curious to hear kind of what you're doing over at FlightCoach. That's the name of your channel, is FlightCoach. And
it is.
And I mean, you've had some really great videos. I think that the
Thanks.
Adolf Hitler reacts to hang gliders changing to paragliders is like likely the best paragliding parody that we've seen, and so I got to give you a hats off to that one. But
thanks for that, man.
Yeah, let's hear what you're doing at FlightCoach. What's the goal? What are you hoping to do? How are you helping people?
That's a great question. You know, for me, FlightCoach, it's a channel, but it's also the name of my brand. What I'm trying to do is to help people get more out of flying and out of their life in general. Because I'm a business coach as well. So business-wise, I coach two distinct groups, like entrepreneurs, businessmen and women, and on the other side, pilots. So the recreational aviators, as I call them. So people that do like hang gliding, paragliding, paramotoring, flying sailplanes, some general aviation. And I focus mainly on getting people, well, usually it's getting them back into the game. It's usually people that have been in like a shitty situation, be it being in an incident, being in an accident, witnessing one, or it can also just be people that have like experienced life-changing events, like conquered an illness, maybe became a dad or a mom, and that usually makes you rethink the things you're doing in your life, the amount of risk you're taking, the way you're living your life. So one of my main like services is the coaching, and FlightCoach as my YouTube channel. That's the way we met, was always meant as like the well, so to speak, the freemium. You know, sharing my knowledge. Don't know if I would like to call it wisdom, but my way of looking at things, the things I've experienced, being like a long-term pilot, teaching people how to fly. So on my channel, I provide that for free. And if people say I want more, well, there's also a business part to that. So
that's great. It sounds like you're almost like a fear injury rehabilitator.
Yeah, that's part of the services I provide. I'm doing other things within FlightCoach, you know, like also technical analysis of takeoffs and landings. People can send me the videos, and for a very friendly fee, you get some golden nuggets to chew on. Because I feel that a lot of people in our sport, they just do it on autopilot, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
it's usually very difficult to ask for feedback if you've been flying for a few years.
Tell me more about that.
Oh yeah. You know, you all seen the situations on launch, like people with the great fairing and the ultralight kit and the two-liners, as we'll talk about later. And then everybody's all looking at this person. What is he or she gonna do? How is he or she gonna do today? What is the distance gonna be? And then what's the takeoff gonna look like? And more often than not, the takeoffs are, well, to put it mildly, very bad. And you and I, we're
You can
both
use more
students.
colorful language on
Yeah.
this channel. God damn it.
It's just fucking horrible. It's dangerous. It's demotivating. It's uninspirational, and it's not a. I think the takeoff should be like the cherry on top to start with. If you have a great takeoff, you feel in control. You can make something out of your flight. Well, if the takeoff is something that you feel like you need to do to get airborne, and then the paragliding starts, I think that's a horrible mindset. But it is a mindset that a lot of people have.
I so agree. Yeah, it's crazy crazy what I've seen around the world. Honestly, as I've traveled, I just have seen so many people who just can barely launch their gliders.
Yeah.
And that honestly, that goes from E and Bs to two-liners. But in general, I see worse launches on two-liners than I do on E and Bs most of the time, you know, which is a sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
I think that the building blocks of progression are out of order. And I think that it comes down to social dynamics here. I think it is what we're putting our priorities on.
Yep.
Because as you say, if launching is just a means to get airborne, then you've missed a big step, I think, in my opinion. So, you know, I am recalling quite vividly in my head, I'm in Valle de Bravo, Mexico, on what is one of the most legendary launches in North America. And there is a group of Norwegian pilots there, and they are all flying Xenos, brand new, crispy Xenos. They've all got the comp kits. They've all got, you know, all the brand new, you know, the Udis and the yada yadas. And they're trying to do these forward launches, and they just cannot launch their gliders. And what they're doing a forward launch on a Xeno midday in Mexico is just like beyond me. But it's interesting. So what comes up even right now is like, I kind of want to like shame them, but I think there's, I think that right there is one of the elements. This is like one of the very key social elements that is in our sport that we're not talking about. It's like shame. It's like, how do we encourage each other? How do we guide each other? How do we help each other progress? How do we regulate one another in some way, you know? Because it's not to say that it's my job to keep you from doing stupid things, but like there's a social aspect of regulation. We just like socially, like as humans, we just like socially regulate each other all the time.
I think in our sports, regulation usually has like a negative connotation.
Of course it does.
It's like a framework of stuff you cannot do.
Of course.
But I think when done properly, regulation is facilitation. It is making it possible to do the stuff we want to do. We all want to fly. We all like seeing other people fly. We prefer being together in the air so we can see where the thermals are. So yeah, this question you're asking now, I think it's a great question, and one of the problems is that most people are not even asking this question.
Yeah, and I think the question, if I distill it down, there's a couple questions I have, which is, one is, how do we talk to our friends about when they do something that's not safe, or how do we bring up something that we see that we think needs to be addressed, right? And that's just like between two people who know each other. The other thing is, how do we treat incoming pilots into our area? How do we treat visiting pilots? How do we treat beginners? How do we treat people who have just had an incident or an accident? I think that we typically do it wrong, and we typically do it with shame. I think what comes up in us is our own fear, right? When we see something scary, the first thing that comes up is our own fear. The most common chain of emotions that people don't know about is that their fear goes by undetected, and then their anger comes up to protect them from their fear, and they notice their anger, but they'd never noticed their fear. So when something scary happens in front of them, they become angry because they think that they should be angry about something, when in reality, they never dealt with the fear that came up because they watched something scary, right?
Yep.
And watching something scary externally literally makes us afraid for ourselves because we're doing the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Yep.
We're doing the same thing. And even if we're really good, and even if we have a bunch of checklists, like the potential for us to screw it up is still there every time.
Yep.
And so the emotional mechanics of the community of paragliding, of the culture, literally that's what we're talking about, the emotional mechanics of the culture of paragliding. So much of our experience in paragliding comes from this part right here. Like there's the technical left, right. There's like the atmospheric, the up, down, the wind, the whole thing. But so much of our experience comes from the social culture of paragliding.
Yep.
This is what keeps people from asking for help. This is what keeps the guy on the two-liner who can't launch it from admitting that he needs to kite.
Yep. It's like a ladder. I think it's like a ladder system. And people need to have the feeling that they're progressing, going to the next step on the ladder. I
The
think it's a term
ladder.
you
The
used.
ladder.
The ladder. Yeah, it's a term you used in our previous talk. Comparagliding.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
People need to
comparagliding.
people need to compare, especially in, let's keep it a paragliding, but I think we see it in all walks of life. But people in paragliding have a really strong urge to compare their skills, their knowledge to others as a sort of justification for what they are, for who they are. I think if you can let go of that, it becomes a lot easier to ask for feedback or even to give feedback.
Okay,
I feel that's what you're on about as well, right? I think these are related.
I agree. The term you used, or the phrase you used there, was that if we can let go of that, then we'll X, Y, and Z. But I think actually we don't actually need to let go of it entirely. I think that we need to see it.
Yeah.
In a previous episode on my YouTube channel, I interviewed my friend, Dr. Greg Enriquez. He's the head of psychology at James Madison University, and we talked about the transformational power of risk. In that episode, he lays out for us that when we do risky things, we are not just trying to show off externally and prove ourselves externally. We're also trying to prove ourselves internally. There's a series of challenges in the world, and we are overcoming them, and in doing so, we build up our esteem. We temper ourselves to the world for ourselves.
Yep.
So we definitely need to see this urge in us to achieve externally.
Bless you.
Externally and internally.
No, but I agree. You're absolutely right. It is not letting go. It is becoming aware of what's happening inside, and we should embrace it.
Yeah, and there is an element of letting go, right? Because once you see it, you can see it as this thing that's here, and you don't have to identify with it in the way that you used to. So, I guess what I'm kind of ruminating on lately, what I've been thinking about for a while that I haven't really talked about is this, the one of the last YouTube videos that I made on the trip was, why can't paragliders talk about safety? And that is a episode that is about the social dynamic, the social culture in paragliding. I think of the
That was
social.
one of your best episodes. This
Oh,
needs to
thank
be
you.
said, I think. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
This was a
Um,
great episode.
yeah. It doesn't have the hot flash of some of the changing paragliders and crashing stuff that I've
But
talked about. But
yeah,
I think that for a guy like you who's been around paragliding a really long time, I think it's um, uh, maybe more resonant. And I think that why we can't talk about paragliding or why we can't talk about safety in paragliding is actually so important. And I think why we can't lean on each other, and why we are why we are stuck in a constant competitive dynamic between each other in paragliding,
yeah,
is something we see in the world. And what I really love about your channel and what you constantly talk about is that if you want to help people achieve and fly better and enjoy their flying career more, it's going to change their life, because there's no fucking difference, right?
no,
It's like the fractal is just like it's intertwined,
it,
it's overlapped,
yeah,
it's all just like
it's endless.
connected.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
endless. And so it's so cool that you and I can ruminate on the social culture of paragliding, and in a way we are literally talking about the world. We're talking about
yeah. It's
geo
just an extension. It's a
it
way to
is
express ourselves. Yeah,
we're talking about geopolitics, we're talking about gender relations, we're talking about um, psychological well-being, we're talking about personal development and spiritual development and all this stuff, and paragliding is merely just one corner of the fractal that the more we zoom into it, the more it opens up and blossoms. So
yeah, yeah.
um,
It's like one of my instructors, like very long ago, he called like flying the mirror to the soul.
oh yeah.
One of my most recent videos also titled like that. And I strongly resonate with what you're saying now. The paragliding thing, and maybe it goes for a lot of air sports. It's a way to look at ourselves, in social contexts, in relation to others, but also
Uh-huh.
in relation to our own development, our own desires, our own fears, because it can be really confronting. But it can also be enforcing. It can be a catalyst for change. Um,
Absolutely.
Not as a pilot necessarily. It starts there, but change in us as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Getting back to the video we were just talking about, because maybe you haven't noticed, but the video you made about the safety of paragliding, why we can't talk about safety, I scrolled through your comments yesterday because I thought this video was going to come up. And I think it was really, really typical for what we see happening, is that like 99 out of the 100 comments were really positive, really people feeling what you were on about, so to
Uh-huh.
speak. And there was this one person who I think voiced the opinion of quite a few people that we're not seeing on our channels, because they want to shut their eyes for this kind of stuff. And he or she, don't know if it's a he or she, said something along the lines of, well, this is not a proper safety analysis. There's so much to unpack there.
Uh-huh.
Someone actually probably meant that. Someone
Uh-huh.
actually felt, by seeing the title of your video and then seeing the video and then saying, well, this is not an analysis. This is just someone rambling on about stuff. That's difficult. Don't you feel that's weird?
um
It's
Weird,
recognizable.
no. It is recognizable, and
Yeah.
it's unsurprising to me. It's unsurprising. I think that the state of the world and the state of people, it's unsurprising to me. And I want to temper myself to that kind of shit. I think that I wish I was less affected by the comments of my YouTube channel than I am. And
Don't we all? Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
my temptation to turn the comments off on my channel has grown and grown, but I also think for this particular type of channel, I just can't do that. I think that there's
No,
too much value in
the
sharing
interaction.
wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So.
and the like-minded people finding each other. But the reason why I'm stipulating this specific comment now, not because we should pay a lot of attention to the comment per se,
Mm-hmm.
but more because it is the voice of a lot of people that you and I think, are not reaching, or at least not properly,
Mm-hmm.
and that if we could, then we would have a really big impact on the scene. We would be
Mm.
changing the things that we're talking about now.
Mm.
Heck, maybe we wouldn't even have to make this kind of videos talking to each other, talking
Mm-hmm.
to how pilots should converse or relate to each other.
Mm. Mm. Well, I guess I just want to say one thing, and we keep pulling on this thread and we keep going around it, and I want to get back to the thread itself. But I think that for this one, there's only so many people who this kind of message resonates with, and I can't
True.
force anyone.
Yeah.
If it doesn't
No.
resonate, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. And if you think I'm crazy, it's fine. If you think I'm oversensitive or overdramatic or rambling on, it's totally fine. There's, if you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one. If you make something that no one will dislike, you'll make something that no one will actually like.
No, true, true.
And
You
so,
become the king of average. Yeah.
yeah. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a fuck it attitude that I try to embody here. And because the reality is that, like, you've made the videos that are like vulnerable and thoughtful and had the response from people who are looking for vulnerable, thoughtful content.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there it is. And it's like, and is it a small number? Yeah. And would you have a bunch more fucking subscribers if you did things that were just like totally to the normie flatlander? Yeah, of
Yeah.
course you would. But we're making
But I don't
paragliding
care for
content.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're right. And I wouldn't care for that. I'm not making videos, um, and I think we're in the same boat there. I'm not making videos to get as many subscribers or as many likes or
Of course
hours in
not.
view time. I
Of
just want to
course
get
not.
this message out there to
Of
everywhere it
course not.
resonates with. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is also, like, we also want to get that message out there, and there's something transformational that we're talking about. There's something that can profoundly change your life, that can profoundly change how you fly and how you relate and how you contribute to this community
Yeah.
internationally. And so there's something there that we really want to like talk about. And
But that's why I always um, keep longing for ways to maybe change the way I get the message across a bit. So I always ask myself, is there anything I can do differently, I can do more, or I can do less of to get this message across to more people? If you allow me a little example out of another context, there was this guy I was trying to teach how to do a forward launch. This was his first day of learning paragliding, and he was like this big hunk of meat. Like, he was a really strong, muscled guy. He was like 2 meters tall, 1 meter wide, and he was all force and no subtlety. And within the instructor corps, we always have this little joke: you can teach women how to launch easier than men in general because they are more subtle.
It's not even a
Yeah.
joke.
No. No, but you gotta be careful with gentrification nowadays. But the point I was trying to make, this guy, he was ready to give up. 4 instructors had tried teaching him how to do it, like by showing it to him, by holding his hands, trying all kinds of different techniques. And all of a sudden, I thought he just needs to let go of his mental picture of being a really strong dude. So I asked him, "Are you willing to try one last thing before you're gonna quit?" He said, "Yes, because I really want to fly." I said, "Well, I want you to be the embodiment of a ballerina." And I was with two other guys from his group, and they were all laughing. I said, no, but this is serious. I want you to take off all the stuff, and I want like the harness and put it all on the side. I want you to walk for me as a ballerina for 50 meters. And he was first thinking that it was like a joke, but I explained to him, no, just trust me, try to walk like a ballerina. And then he said, well, if that's what it takes to learn how to fly, then I will walk like a ballerina. And he was like walking, like making holes in the floor. It was, it was wild and uncontrolled. And I said, but no, that's not how a ballerina walks. Well, long story short, after 10 minutes, he was walking like a ballerina, like standing on one leg, making little pirouettes, and he was feeling like he was a ballerina.
Uh-huh.
And then I told him, we're gonna make the forward launch attempt only once. And if it is not improved over what you've been doing all day, then you're just gonna stop it.
Yeah.
Then it's nothing for you. And he did it perfectly.
Like a ballerina.
Like a ballerina. And everybody was looking at me like they saw water burning. I don't think that's a proper English expression, right? But they were really it's a Dutchified expression. They were looking at, they did not understand what they were seeing. And he came back to me and he said, what was it for kind of voodoo? He said, well, it was just a mindset. And this was an example of doing something in a really different way than I'm used to doing stuff, like I'm used to teaching. But this guy, we would have lost forever in the paragliding community if I didn't do that. I think if I wouldn't have done this very weird technique, which I've never tried in the 8 years I've been teaching.
Yeah.
And he's still flying to this day. He's having a lot of fun. And I'm always trying to do this with my channel as well. That's why I made the Adolf Hitler video, which was really a non-standard video for me, something completely different, like an experiment.
Quite bold.
Are you? Yeah. Are you never in this like frame of mind that you want to try to get your message across in a very different way to maybe reach a broader audience?
You know, it's interesting because I think I might be totally blind to who my audience is, which might be a huge mistake of mine. But I think that my channel is merely just a place. It's just a space for it to come out of me. And I'm not thinking about where it goes. I think about it just comes out of me. That's as far as I want to think about it, really.
All right.
And because I'll think about something for long enough that like I know it's a thread. Like right now, like I have this like how men relate to men in paragliding and how that affects the culture of our sport. That's something I'm like, it's not totally baked yet. We're like talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a future video. Mm-hmm. I think about it. I observe it, stews and cooks in me. And then finally it like comes out in a verbalization, right? Like some way it's, you know, I get a hold of it with my mouth that I can say it and I say it.
Yeah.
Who it goes to and who watches it and what they do with it is pretty much lost on me. I think I'm lost on that, but.
And that's typical broadcast. That's like a broadcasting mindset, right?
I mean, I just don't have control over the rest of it really. And so.
Interesting. Okay.
But there's something that the anecdote that you just gave me, the teaching the bodybuilder to launch like a ballerina. One of my best friends, her name is Dr. Annie Pendergraft. She's a clinical psychologist and she is a mountain bike coach. She has laid out for me the ways in which young girls are treated differently than young boys that lead them to have a higher fear sensitivity than men. So women have a higher fear sensitivity than men in general. And inside of men, we have this huge spectrum of fear sensitivity, right? And basically the way that we're teaching mountain biking, and I would say the way that we're teaching paragliding, it basically is a way to teach people who are about 3/4 up the chain of fear insensitive.
So maybe explain the concept fear sensitivity to me, being like a
Yeah.
simpleton.
Okay.
What is fear sensitive?
So fear sensitivity is how averse you are to a scary situation, and or how well you can deal with that, how well you can move through it. This is to say, it's almost like an emotional bump tolerance. It's like
All right.
it's like an emotional bump tolerance. It's like when something really scary happens, like some people will be more traumatized by it than others. Some people will be they'll more readily freeze than other people in a certain
Yeah.
situation, right? So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, like I've grown up as a professional action sports athlete. I did my first backflip on skis when I was like a little kid, So for me, teaching me how to paraglide was like, I need to know the lefts and rights and the technical thing, like, because I've
Yeah.
got like the fear, like how to deal with the fear part of it. Like I
Yeah.
have that.
You got that down. Yeah.
I've got that down. But so many of us come into paragliding after working a desk job, right? We want to
Yeah.
paraglide. It's a beautiful thing. We think it's peaceful and we want to get into it because it's peaceful. And then as we get into it, we realize, holy shit, this can be really scary. You can die doing this. Absolutely. So I think that the reality is that we're basically teaching paragliding in the whole world, as far as I can tell, to people who are not that sensitive to fear. And we really don't have a way to teach people who are very sensitive to fear, right? Because like you kind of
Yeah.
have
I know
to,
exactly what you mean.
you
Yeah.
kind of have to well, first of all, you have to be like somewhat insensitive to fear to even want to paraglide. Because some people look at paragliding and they're like, oh, hell no. Oh,
Yeah.
hell
Yeah.
no. You could not
Yeah.
make me do that. Right. And
Yeah.
fair
They've seen
enough.
the videos. They've seen the crash videos on
Yeah.
YouTube, and they think
And
it's
fair
all
enough.
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not that we're trying to get every single person to paraglide, but like the bodybuilder guy, he probably has like a pretty low sensitivity to fear. He's strong and he's right. And so like
He
we
has a
can
low
like,
sensitivity in general, maybe we
yeah,
can say.
no, seriously. No, seriously.
Yeah.
And, but then there's like women who like would love to paraglide, but the only way to learn paragliding is a very like masculine, strong, kind of forceful way.
Yeah.
Or we also have men who, like I have a friend who like has a nice new mountain bike, and I advise him to keep the mountain bike set up in a certain way that will make it very forgiving, because I know that if he crashes hard one time, he'll
He's
sell
going
the
to
thing.
stop.
He's going
Yeah.
to stop.
Yeah.
He'll sell
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so for the same reason, we all know, if you've been in paragliding longer than a year, you know the person who got their P2, bought the gear, took a collapse, sold all their shit.
Yep.
It
Yep.
just happens just like that, man.
Boatloads. Yeah. Yeah.
Loads of people do it. Okay.
Yep.
And so I think that one of the things that's missing from our culture is an acknowledgement of the different fear sensitivities that we have, and a way to mitigate, teach, talk to people on these different levels of fear sensitivity, right? So
It's
this is
also
something that
it's
really negatively impacts women in our sport, because there are women who are quite tough, who have a low fear sensitivity, who come into the sport and they're like, great, like paragliding is awesome. Like my friend Patty, she's a Mexican. She's like one of the best female paraglide pilots in the world. And she's tough and she's strong. And she's like, she doesn't like to take collapses just like all of us, but like she's tough.
yeah.
But there's so many things about paragliding, especially cross country, that like a feminine, sensitive, um, subtle approach, man, like I swear to God, if we could teach more women how to paraglide, like we would find that women can cross country paraglide quite well with their innate sensitivities, right? They make good flying decisions. They're conservative. They're patient.
I think this is not even necessarily connected to like women, like people who are more fear sensitive in general. This goes for as well, of course.
No, I
And
totally agree. So
the,
if you
the, the,
think
pro-
of,
the problem is understanding, maybe. Maybe the problem is the understanding on the part of the people teaching the students or the pilots how to fly.
Uh-huh.
You know, we've all heard the student saying, literally or not literally, but I'm scared. And what is the usual response that 99 out of 100 instructors give you? What do they say, Ari, when you say you're scared? What do most instructors tell you?
I don't know. They repeat the technique.
Yeah, or they say it's normal. We all have to go through this. But anyone who's a bit observative in that situation and who's very fear sensitive notices that that is not the case. Not everyone is going to the same level of fear. Not everyone is having the same amount of fear for doing the same action. So
and they're not having the
being
same reaction to the fear, right?
Exactly. And so when your instructor tries to motivate you by saying it's normal, they're actually denying you your own experience.
Absolutely.
And they're shutting the door.
There.
And yeah.
And to it's not a malicious thing, right? Like the instructor is not, but the instructor is the guy who's very fear insensitive, and so he's a paraglide pilot and loves it, and like wants everyone to love paragliding, and so it's very difficult for us
in general. Yeah,
it's very difficult for us to put ourselves in another person's shoes or imagine that a person has an experience so radically different than our own.
Yeah,
right.
That's why and not to pat myself on the shoulder, but I think we're probably on opposite sides of the scale when it comes to fear sensitivity. I think I'm very fear sensitive compared to you. And when students come up to me and they say, I'm afraid, my response will never be and has never been, oh, that's normal. I'm always asking them, can you explain to me what you're feeling? What are you thinking? So we can maybe talk through the scenarios.
Yeah, what's the story?
What's the story here? Where is it coming from? Usually, those are things that are quite easily addressed. You know, these are things like,
if you can say it, if you can say it, if you can acknowledge it, if you can say the story, you can look at it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm afraid that all my lines will rip off the glider. I'm afraid that when I have a knot in my glider, when I didn't check it properly and I launch, I will die. I'm afraid that my reserve will fall out. I'm afraid that when I get a collapse, I will die. Usually things end in I will die, you know?
Yep.
And these are all scenarios that live in the head of most beginners, and the people that are more fear sensitive, they are more aware of it and they express it, and it like feeds their fear. So by saying it's normal,
you dismiss, you don't even understand what they're actually afraid of.
Yeah,
it's an assumption. It's an assumption that they're afraid of a certain thing.
Yeah, and it's something I think you can, I think in the Netherlands we have a really professional instructor training program. It takes quite a few years and a lot of days of practice at different schools, a lot of theory study. To get to the highest level of being an instructor. And there are also a lot of classes that are purely on didactics, on how do you teach people something and how do you relate to different kind of students. Well, I know that there are still a lot of countries out there. You can get your instruction paper if you have an X amount of hours, and there are like 5 guys that put a signature on a paper because they think you're great.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have taught a number of people to paraglide, but I have only taught people to paraglide who are professional action sports athletes.
Yeah.
Because I just have known that if you can speak my language, then I can probably teach you to paraglide. But I don't want to assume that I could teach anyone to paraglide. And so I've taught a number of people who are professional snowboarders who already have their fear thing, and we already speak the same language in the mountains and the fear thing. And it's like, but yeah. And so I think that it's, this is we're kind of circling around this thread of like how men talk to each other, how men teach each other, how men support each other in paragliding. And I think that one of the things that I'm wondering is, are we all just trying to pretend that we all are insensitive to fear, or we're all the same sensitivity to fear, right? Because
We shouldn't. Yeah.
we shouldn't, but I think we are. I think we're trying to pretend that, the people who are sensitive to fear don't want to like let everyone else know, right? And the guys who are really good, the guys flying two-liners, don't want to admit that they're actually afraid of launching their two-liner, right? And they don't want to admit that they're afraid of doing it would be the segue towards seeking instruction or stepping back or changing gliders or learning to kite or spending a month at the dune, right?
True.
And so
Yeah.
there's kind of we're like jockeying for position on this hierarchy of fear sensitivity,
Yep.
because we all want to be the tough guy that's not afraid.
So you're actually saying that it's cool to be fear insensitive
I
among
think so.
men.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. Yep. It's cool to be fucking Jean-Claude Van Damme, Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Get to the chopper.
I was about to scream the same line, man.
Get to the chopper.
Get down, get down.
Get down now.
Yeah.
And
So how do we solve it? How do we solve that? If that's the basic attitude that most people have.
okay, first, I don't want to jump to solution too fast, because I think that we still are,
We need more circling.
we're still awaiting to really understand what it is that we're talking about. We're still trying to really understand what we're talking about here.
So let's circle a bit more then before we dive in.
Yeah. So the jockeying, the how do I say it? It's like we're trying to position ourselves in a way that people, it's like our optics, right? We want to present a certain way. We want other people to see us in a certain way, that we're
You
not
want to be the
afraid.
coolest kid. You want to be the coolest kid on the block.
Yeah. Coolest. And there's so many, cool is such a multifaceted thing, right? That's an inner thing and an outer thing.
We want to be admired. Is that it then?
Yes. But I
To
think we
be a
could,
great pilot, you have to, a lot. You need to have a lot of people that think you are a great pilot.
I
Does that
think,
feed it?
I think my intuition is that there are some of us who want to be seen as great, but all of us want to avoid being shamed. Not everyone has an aspiration to be really good. Not everyone has a propensity to show off like I do. But pretty much everyone wants to avoid being humiliated. They want to avoid screwing it up on launch and blowing it and wrapping the instructor in the lines and like failing launch a million times and like making bonehead decisions and crashing into the crowded landing field and all of the things, right? We all want to like avoid shame and embarrassment, humiliation, all those things. And only some of us are really looking for stardom, or how would I say, like looking for outside external validation of being really good, right?
But isn't that like the perception of being humiliated, of feeling shame? Isn't that wildly different from person to person? For instance, I fucked up my knee last year in August with a shitty landing, and I made a video about that. And I did not feel any shame or humiliation sharing that with others.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I felt a bit cool that I was feeling comfortable sharing that, because maybe someone could take something out of it and learn something from that.
Uh-huh.
So just an example. So when are we shaming ourselves? Are you
Well, I
saying
think
that most people wouldn't do this?
well, I think that we're all on a spectrum of sensitivity to shame as well, right? Um, I think that when we talk about how we are, so much of how we are comes down to like childhood trauma, how
Hmm.
we were raised. right? Because if you had a driven parent in your home, say, if your parent really wanted you to succeed and excel and be masterful and achieve, then you were, whether overtly or covertly, you were shamed for failing. You were
Mm-hmm.
shamed
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
blowing it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Whether
True.
that
True.
was because you didn't get the praise of succeeding or you were overtly shamed for
For not
failing,
succeeding. Yeah. Yeah.
either way, that loop becomes programmed. That loop becomes reinforced. And so now in our lives, anything that's not success is experienced emotionally as failure and
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
trigger our shame circuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think in general, no one wants to be shamed, no one wants to be humiliated, and some of us are more sensitive to that than others. I'm very sensitive to that. I have a very sensitive shame circuit. Um, it's one of the things, I think it's one of the fires under my ass that has driven me to be, to do world record high lines, to paraglide as far and as high and as acrobatic and all these different things, right? Because I really want to avoid the negative and I want to achieve the positive. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
very sensitive thing in me. And I have friends who don't give a fuck. They just don't give a fuck. They just want to paraglide and they like it and they're never showing off. And that, I swear to God, they'll never fucking fly anything hotter than a low B. They just don't care.
So shame is a driver. Has been a driver
Absolutely.
for you. Yeah.
So this is the stick and the carrot, right?
Yeah.
This
It's
is the
both.
stick in the carrot. The stick is the shame, and the carrot is the accolade. It's the praise. It's the, you know,
But it's coming from the same thing.
yeah,
It's
and it
coming
comes
from
both.
actually avoiding shame.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like two poles here. Like you can avoid the shame, or you can like chase the prestige,
Right. Right.
right? And it's like that's the same circuit, but two different ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I think that this is one of the things that this is a huge part of what trickles into our culture of paragliding, right? We essentially, in paragliding, some things that I've noticed to circle around this, to talk
Yeah.
about what it
Yeah.
looks like in real life. I think that have noticed, even in myself, a propensity to not ask questions, because asking questions lets in the speculation that I don't know what I'm doing, right?
And that's a bad thing.
Seemingly a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It
For a lot of people,
also,
it is.
yeah, because I want to be seen in a way that has me seen as masterful, as competent, at the very least competent, right? At the very least, not needing my hand held to get off of this damn mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's a huge part of it right there. And I think that that's a very masculine trait, right? And so I know we kind of talked about this earlier, the genderification, but I think if you just think of the spectrum of masculinity to femininity, you basically have two big overlapping circles that have a big overlap in the middle that's men and women, right? The, the most masculine people are likely men, and the most feminine people are most likely women. And in the
Can't
middle,
argue with that.
you
Yeah.
have a big overlap of people who are,
Yeah.
of both men and women who,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in general, I think paragliding it can be both a masculine and a feminine thing to do, right? Because we both can really want to achieve and do and push 5K more, 5K more. We can we can really challenge ourselves and we can really push and we can really try. But there's also this beautiful feminine aspect where you can fucking touch the bottom of a cloud and notice how beautiful it is that there's like a rainbow, a circle
Yes.
rainbow in the cloud.
The halo. Yeah.
And like you can experience the perspective change, and you can like be moved by the sight of a bird in the same thermal as you, meeting eyes with the bird. And there's so many things. There's so many ways that you could do it in a masculine way, but you can
Yeah.
also do it in a feminine way. So
Yeah.
paragliding, I think, is neither masculine nor feminine.
No.
How you
Oh,
want to
you
how
need
you
both
want to
aspects.
how you want to do it is up to you. And I think that there's so many men who are missing out on the really wonderfully transformational feminine moments in paragliding that have them be just moved by the beauty,
Yeah.
right?
True. True. I
There's
had
also
a
there's also
yeah.
another on the other side. There's like people who could probably bring a little bit more try hard into their paragliding. It would probably
Yeah.
make them a bit safer.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might get the courage to like do an SAV or learn maneuvers or learn something new or try something a little bit different or challenge some of their stories in their head of what their fears are and what that
Yeah.
looks like and all those
Yeah.
things. So um it's neither masculine nor feminine, but I think right now we kind of are stuck in a paradigm where the only way we know how to teach it is masculine. The
Yeah, but
culture that the
one thing enforces the other thing as well. I think to be able to fly long distances, you gotta have this can-do mindset. Maybe if you were to categorize it, would be more like the masculine mindset. I
it
can
is.
do this. I'm the fucking king of the world.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go for another 10K. On the other hand, you gotta be aware of the sensations. You gotta
of
be aware
course.
of where the wind's coming from. You gotta be aware of
Uh-huh.
what you're smelling.
Yep.
We know you can smell a thermal when you're high up because the
Yep.
fresh mown grass smell is being blown up to you. And I think if you can combine both of them, you'll naturally be a better pilot. You'll actually achieve more and
Totally
enjoy
agree.
more.
Totally agree. Yeah, the people who I know who are the best pilots, when I think of Josh Cohen, when I think of my friend Revis, um, even when I think of my friend Matt Hinsey, I think of a disidentification with these these kinds of being where they actually are just like dissociated enough from their identities that they can just like be open to the experience that unfolds in front of them.
So what are you actually saying? In general, these are because I don't know them. They're generally very masculine types of guys.
Mm-mm.
Hmm?
No, they're just kind of like,
No?
they don't care whether you think that they're masculine or feminine.
All right, all right. So they're open to both aspects.
Yeah, I mean, they're hyper observant.
Right,
They're
right.
hyper observant people. Like they're so observant. Like every little thing they're like noticing, and they're very sensitive. And
Yeah, but they're
general,
enjoying.
they're in general, they're like a bit more introspective and they're a bit
Yeah.
quieter. And um yeah, so it's interesting because I think we're all, that's pretty much what Gavin's podcast has been all about, is like, how do we distill what the best pilots are? How are the best pilots and how do we be like them? And I don't know. I think the thread that we're on here is basically we might be over objectifying the best pilots. And by doing so, we're basically like making a fucking NBA out of the paragliding community. And we're cutting out all of the people who just want to shoot a fucking basketball.
Yeah,
Because
naturally. And
there's
what is the best pilot? By what standards are you measuring in this context the best pilot?
well, I
You know?
think that the standard that the community at large measures the best pilot is the guy who wins the comp.
Right.
Guy who flies the furthest,
Yeah.
the guy who does the best acrobatics and wins the acro comps, right? The
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
is like still being measured on a very, I mean, even just the concept of the best is an extremely masculine
Yeah.
thing to measure, right? That's a very masculine thing to measure. So it's interesting. I think that I guess I don't have the solutions yet, and we're circling around to identify the problem because, I think a problem well defined is a problem half solved. So
Yep. I agree.
So I think we're seeing a fixation on achievement that kind of cuts out a lot of people. And it really, we're fixating on a type of paragliding that not everyone wants to do. And I think
It's
there's a big space right now. There's a big space for us to learn how to teach people with higher fear sensitivities than me so that we can keep our friends who aren't so gnarly in our sport, and we can keep women in the sport, and we can communicate to each other better. We can help each other learn. We can be safer as a community, because everyone wants to fucking talk about safety, but they only want to talk about the technical safety.
Yep.
Communal safety is essentially like one of the threads that we're pulling on right now. Like,
Yep.
how is the community of paragliding safer? How can we make it safer by changing the culture? Right. And
It's
like I
it's a
said, so
it's a
much of
split
it,
culture.
it is.
The culture is split. You know, when you walk into a pub where the pilots gather after flying,
Uh-huh.
and you ask someone, "How was your flight?" The first sentence is either A, I flew X kilometers, first sentence, or B, I experienced this, or that.
Uh-huh.
And this is what I think typifies, is that a proper word?
Typifies.
This typifies the two categories,
Uh-huh.
the masculine and
Characterizes.
that characterizes the two groups, the feminine approach and the masculine approach.
Uh-huh.
The masculine guy will first say how long he flew, how far he flew, how high he flew.
Or
He
he'll
will,
deprecate and he'll say, yeah, my flight was okay.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And the general feminine population will give you something about the experience. It was
Uh-huh.
beautiful. I had
Uh-huh.
fun. I saw this. I experienced that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I did an experiment once in a group where there was really strong competition. These were all pilots getting into like cross country flying, like furthest distance they've flown until that week was like 25K. And I said, every time we're going to drink beer after the day of flying, and when we talk about how the flight was, we're not going to talk about how far we flew or how high we flew. I don't want to hear any fucking numbers. I want to hear you talk about what you experienced and what that
Uh-huh.
was like for you and how that
Mm.
made you feel. And
Mm-hmm.
after we started doing that, they actually improved the distance they were flying,
Yeah.
because it showed them that there is like a different type of uh, magnifying glass or a different mirror you can use to look
A
at
metric,
what you're
a
doing.
different metric.
Yeah, a different metric.
Yes.
So
Yes.
changing a culture doesn't have to be. You know, I started my career as a business advisor, like working on mergers of big companies, trying to get two very different cultures of people working together. And there are
Mm-hmm.
so many books about how you integrate cultures, right? How you influence and
Mm-hmm.
change cultures, and we can make dozens of episodes about that. But
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the way of just trying something else, just giving a different example and seeing how that fits for you. Like,
Mm.
if you want to try something new, just love the idea for an hour or for a day and see how that works for you.
Yeah, wear it.
Wear it, man.
See how it fits.
Woman. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's so interesting.
Isn't that a way to change the culture?
Yeah, I think that's a great way. I think that, I basically, what I hear you saying is essentially that for us to take on another person's perspective, we have to actually go a level higher than the level that holds a perspective. For
Absolutely.
you to take another person's perspective, you can't just put it next to yours. You actually have to go above your own perspective so that you can get to the place that looks down on perspective, so that you can feel it so that you can
Yeah,
actually look through it for a moment.
yeah, yeah. And this is not like the way we're talking about it. It seems like it is like an intellectual concept, but
Hmm.
this is not something that only people with like a super high IQ can do.
No, it
This is
is.
something that everyone can understand. This,
This is actually a matter of depth.
yeah,
It's a matter of depth because it is a layer deeper. To empathize is a depth exercise. It's not a cognitive thing, right? You can
no,
use your cognition to aid it greatly,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, you actually have to get into another layer of yourself,
yeah,
a deeper part.
yeah. And you have to be
Um,
willing. You just have to be willing to accept the fact that there are different perspectives than your own.
mhm.
And if you
That's
zoom
just the
out, this is,
beginning, right?
yeah, that's the beginning. And if you do this with a group and you let everyone describe their perspective, everyone starts seeing that there are people with a radically different story, a radically different
Hmm.
perspective than their own. And this
Hmm.
already puts into motion the change we're talking about now.
Yeah. So to talk about the change for a minute, to like almost, I guess one of the first things I would want to do here is like, okay, if we're gonna think about the solution is like the bridge between where we are now and where we want to be. So I would almost begin by defining where it is that we want to be. And I think where we want to be, and I want to speak about men. Yeah, I want to speak about men essentially because first of all, paragliding is 90% men at the least, right? There are so many times I've experienced paragliding as 100% men. So many days I go to the hill and we're only men, right?
It
I
differs a bit from my experience, to add a bit to your story, right? Because I've been flying, we're at opposite sides of the globe
Yeah,
almost. You're in America, I'm here in Europe, in the Netherlands. I think if I look back for the last like 3-4 years, in the groups I've taught, on average 30%, sometimes 40% women.
beautiful.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
awesome.
that.
And I
Well,
think I think it is increasing.
I'm also in the American West here, where
Yeah,
like in the summer you launch off into a 5 meter a second thermal. Like
yeah.
it's really,
It's the place where the masculine men gather.
yeah, we're the cowboys out here. We're the
Yeah.
cowboys. Oh,
Yeah.
and there's cowgirls. Don't get me wrong. There's
Oh
cowgirls, and
yeah.
there's some really badass chicks that fly big distance out here. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, um,
No, but continue. You were on. You were gonna
yeah,
knock it out.
you're a great tangenter. I appreciate that. um, so I think I was setting some kind of like trying to define where it is that we're trying to go. I think that there's transformational power here because I think that as we increase or as we improve the culture around paragliding, we actually are doing work on ourselves that allow ourselves to see our motivations and our emotions and bring awareness to ourselves. Um, the power of transformation there has a lot to do with healing and forgiveness of ourselves. And when we do that, we actually become much more forgiving of other people. I think
Hmm.
right now we have a tendency to shame ourselves and to be really hard on ourselves. That's how our parents raised us. And so when we see someone do something dangerous or scary on the hill, we want to shame and talk to them as if we are their parent. That's the voice of regulation, that's the sound of the voice of regulation in our heads because that's how we were raised, whether that was our parents or our teachers or the police or our boss. That
Hmm.
is the way our world has been shaped. And I think that we could fantasize about paragliding being an island that is separate from the dominant culture in the world that forces us to achieve and shames us when we don't. And we could make
Hmm.
paragliding a cultural island where we can actually start imagining how we would want the social culture of paragliding to feel experientially for us. And once we can start fantasizing about that, we can do this. We can imagine this utopia, how we want it to feel. Then we can kind of start working backwards from there. How do we want it to feel? Can help us understand how we want it to look and sound. And then once we kind of do that, then we can start working backwards on like how we want the actions to be and what needs to happen in our personal development for those actions to not just be defined, but be effervescent from our characters, how they just arise, what needs to happen in me for those things to just happen. Because I can't force myself to be any way that's not just like how I am. And so to begin to imagine what this cultural utopia looks like, this island of paragliding that's separate from the dominant culture, it's very inclusive. It's very safe.
It should be a warm island, Harry. It should be a warm island.
It's beachy.
Yeah.
It's
beachy. Yeah. Coconuts.
It's beachy as fuck. It's inclusive and it's helpful and it's safe, emotionally safe. It's free from the shame and the rivalry, right? The rivalry, the competitiveness that underscores so much of the culture. There is such an underscore of competition, of comparagliding. This culture of comparagliding, where everyone is on the hill comparing themselves all the time, whether it's to themselves the day before or them on their best day or them on their potential or them versus the students or them versus the experts. There's this comparison, and it's just a radically unsafe mindset. It's a radically unsafe culture to live in, because as long as we're comparing, we compare because that's what keeps us afloat. And if we're not doing that, if we're not achieving, then we're going to sink and we're going to drown.
Well, maybe we can organize like paraglider rehabilitation trips to this island you got visualized here, because I think that would be a really swell thing.
Yeah.
It should be filled with joy, I think. I haven't heard you mentioning that one yet, but I think that should be a very important driver, because joy, comes from the inside.
I agree. And reverence.
For what? Not for the things we are achieving, right?
It could be, though. It could be. And this is not to shame the masculine part that wants to achieve and control, command, win, compete. It's not to.
You should complement it.
It's not to say that we shouldn't compare ourselves to ourselves yesterday. Like, that's how we improve.
True.
This is to say that to fixate on one aspect becomes problematic, because we end up finding ourselves in a cul-de-sac of culture.
Yeah. So, but not referring the,
because then paragliding
we fly.
Yeah, exactly. Because then paragliding becomes a male sport.
Yep.
Right? Or it becomes a men and tough chicks.
Yeah. So that you get
strong men,
yeah.
Tough men and tough chicks.
Yeah.
Instead of, because I have so many friends who are sensitive men, who are more fear averse. And it's like, if he takes a collapse, he's going to sell his gear. So how do we kind of like hedge that from happening? So, and it's not to shame the competitive try hard part of paragliding, because I have that. It's just, I'm trying to not let that be all of paragliding for me.
So maybe we're getting to a point now that we can give the guys and girls like listening or watching this like some pointers on how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because we run the risk of this being like a very theoretical, hard, though heartfelt, but theoretical thing between you and me.
Yes.
We're trying to spread the love, right, Ari?
Yeah. So
If I may kick off with one.
great. Let's hear it.
I think when you're listening to this, watching this, you usually have buddies with whom you do the flying. You talk about flying. I think it would be a great thing if you start setting some ground rules. My rules may sound a bit restrictive, but like some guidelines on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. I think it is okay to sometimes put the finger on that, and you can do that while drinking beer. That's no problem at all. Because I have a rule in my group of flying buddies: we don't laugh. We don't have fun about each other's mishaps, each other's fuck ups. We can talk about it, but when someone fucks up, that's not something we laugh about. And you can have many more of these like ideas
These are like boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah. But without sounding restrictive, it's an environment that makes everybody feel happy about what they experience. You can just.
I love this.
You have one
I love
too.
this.
Yeah,
I love this.
great.
And just to build on yours to help people understand, there's a difference between a rule and a boundary. A rule is what I put on you, so you can't do this. A boundary is about me. It's what I accept. So, to try to put that into a framework, it's more like a boundary is I fly and communicate with people who don't laugh at me, who don't mock me, who don't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't accept that.
Good.
Right.
Good one. Yeah.
And so that helps because making a rule is so much easier than having a boundary.
Sure.
Because having a boundary actually means that we actually have to have some kind of agency about ourselves.
Yeah.
Because rules, we just get to put them on other people, right?
Yeah.
And this is a part of growing up. This is like how we were taught.
Yeah.
We just like we grew up with a fucking world of rules and no boundaries.
That's why I'm saying we shouldn't see it as restrictive. It should be something that is facilitating the way we deal with each other as a community of pilots. Another thing can be tourists or visitors. We treat them as being ambassadors of our sport. Now, some pilots really get angry and frustrated when tourists start like crossing the lounge because it's the shortest route from A to B. What the fuck they know? In most cases, lounges are not very clearly marked. So I have seen a lot of lounges here in Europe where there's just a path going across the lounge. Yeah, we should be happy to be there. And if people start asking us questions like, did you build that flying machine yourself? Are you going to jump off the mountain? Are you not afraid you're going to die? Yeah, there are basically two ways you can treat those people: as being in your way and keeping you from doing what you love, or a way to spread the love. Because that's maybe how we get new paragliders or more understanding of what we're doing.
I think emotional intelligence would solve all of that, because we have, when we're getting ready to launch, there is an anxiousness, there is a fear. We are about to take to the skies, right? And so when we have someone distracting us, the fear of our own predicament bypasses us. We don't notice it. And we go straight to the anger that projects at the other person, that you're the problem. You're the fucking tourist on the launch. What are you doing here? Get out of here. Get out of my way. And just
emotional intelligence certainly helps us be aware of this.
Because
it works like this.
Because sometimes people ask you all kinds of questions, and for me, at the point in paragliding that I'm at, I can pretty much answer questions as I fucking launch.
Yeah.
Right? And there's other people who really need to be damn focused the whole time. And so this awareness, some days I might be different, and I might say, hey, I'm getting ready to launch. I'm going to need to be in my zone here.
Yeah.
I hope, maybe we can talk about this later. If you're up here tomorrow before I launch, then I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah. Or go walk over to the guy with the blue helmet over there. He loves talking to people.
And he's the local
He'll
instructor,
answer all
and
your questions.
he's
Yeah.
Dutch and always talks and loves to make
Yeah.
big tangents, and he'll explain this whole thing to you. Uh, um, so yeah, I think a little emotional intelligence goes so far in this, and I think that paragliding, I've talked so much about the power of transformation that paragliding contains, and I think that as we ruminate on this, I'm happy to hear other people's thoughts on what their anecdotal experience has been with the culture of paragliding, where they are in the spectrum of fear sensitivity. These are the kind of comments I would love to see on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So true.
what they think they want the culture of paragliding to feel like this is essentially launch culture. What does it feel like on launch? What does it feel like in the landing zone? What does it feel
Yeah.
like at the pub?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And how do
Yeah.
we want it to feel? Because we have to start there. We have to start there, because if we don't start there, then we're going to skip all of that, and we're going to go right to solutions, and we're going to put rules on other people, and we're never going to do the work ourselves, and we're going to project that it's all outside of ourselves, when in reality we want to feel a certain way. How do we want to feel?
Yeah. I'd like to add two on top of those. Like, I think you and I agree that there is room for improvement in the culture, to put it mildly. I'd like to know if the people listening, watching, have that same experience,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they just don't understand what we're on about and think everything's fine. And
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that there is room for improvement, what are you going to do to help get there, to help make
Mm-hmm.
things better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and is there anything that we've touched on here that really resonated? Is there anything that
Yeah,
was illuminating to what might be the course of action forward? What might be the important part? What is important in this? Because it's different for everyone. We all want to feel slightly different. I think there are feelings that we all want to feel. We all want to feel included. We all want to feel,
loved.
um,
Yeah,
yeah. We all want to feel safe, like that we're not going to be shamed and humiliated by the culture, the community around us, because who wants that? So
true,
it's
true.
very interesting. This has been a great session, a great rumination, and I'm glad that we didn't try to solve this whole thing preemptively. I think
Likewise.
there's so much thinking and feeling we need to do before we I think we're chipping away at it. We gotta uncover the thing first before we can fight it.
Yep, yep.
Oh,
Create awareness.
yeah. So I think in general we all just need to be a bit softer and more sensitive with our own emotional states and the states of other people. I think that if we're more kind to ourselves, then we're going to end up being more kind to other people. I think that why we can't talk about safety is a great um it's that's like one piece of this puzzle. I think that thing that we talked about there is one piece of it. I think that the personal development stuff and the fear injuries that you kind of are really versed with as another. I think that the fear sensitivity is an important part. I think that how that relates to gender, and how that relates to machismo, and how that relates to prowess and all these things is a interesting piece of it. And yeah, I think we should keep doing this. I think we should keep putting this one together, because I think that building an image of what the culture really is, and it's so different in different places, but there really is a thread that goes through it. Because I've paraglided in America, I've paraglided in Europe, I've paraglided in China, I've paraglided in Peru, and there's like that. I've never been anywhere that I'm like, wow, this paragliding culture is so radically different. It's pretty.
True, true,
It's a similar
true.
thing around the world. So
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing because it provides like a common starting ground with all
I
the
agree.
different background, different ethnicities we have around the
I
world,
agree.
different perspectives,
I
and the
agree.
same situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love to do this, Ari. We should continue building on it.
Okay, buddy. This was a good sesh, man. What do we do? And it did an hour and 15 or something.
Yeah, it is, right? Time flew
Yeah.
by.
Time flew by. That's what happens when you're having fun, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
So you're
thanks
gonna
so
put
much, boss. Let's I feel like this is something worth revisiting, like the culture of
Yeah.
paragliding, where it is, how do we move it forward into a place that's more inclusive for everyone, wherever they land, and the fear sensitivity and what their aspirations for paragliding is, and how the changing the culture of paragliding can help open the door for paragliding to be the tool for transformation that we know it is in
Wow.
everyone's life in the world.
That is an awesome summary.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great thing to ruminate on, and I think it's really
Yeah.
helpful. And I
I
hope it's
think it
as
will
helpful to
provide,
people watching.
talking about the stick and the carrot, I think if we start going deeper on this, maybe in future sessions, if we manage to change this, it will have a lot of positive effects. You know,
I
it will
agree.
make people probably fly safer.
Yeah,
It
of
will
course.
make people enjoy flying
Uh-huh.
more. It will probably make us as pilots be more enjoyable to be around for our
Totally agree.
spouses, our loved ones,
I totally agree.
and probably we'll touch on a lot of other advantages.
I totally
Yeah,
agree with that. I totally agree with that. The power for transformation goes so much further than just paragliding.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'll probably make you fly further as well for
It
the
literally
masculine
will.
people listening. Yeah,
It literally will make you fly further. It will literally make you enjoy it more. It will keep you safer and keep you flying longer. Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much to be gained. So much to be gained from that. We're on to
I love
something
doing
here,
this,
buddy.
Harry. We should do it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Hawaii tomorrow. I'll be back in a week. We'll do this again.
Oh man, this was super. So, what are you going to do with this? Make a podcast out of it? Make a YouTube episode out of it
I'm
as
gonna
well?
make a
You're going to do
YouTube
both?
episode out of it. It's
Okay.
too paragliding centric to go on my podcast,
Okay.
but I think we're on to something.
Super. And you're going to make this like a full length, or you're going to
Full length,
full length,
unedited,
unedited, raw?
raw, the
Super.
conversation. I listen to
Yeah.
podcasts on YouTube all the time. I listen to fucking Joe Rogan on YouTube. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So,
really looking forward to seeing what you're going to make of this. Well,
okay. Yeah,
looking at
so to
it
close
again.
out, I
Yeah.
really hope that anyone who's made it this far will check out Boss's channel. That's FlightCoach, which has some really great content on it. And I think that anyone at this point, if you've listened this far, I would love for you to leave a comment. What it is, anything that was resonant, anything you want to add to this conversation. This is conversational for a reason, and YouTube is a great platform for us to keep the conversation going. So would love to hear from people what they think, and yeah, stoked to have another conversation ruminating on the culture of paragliding.
Woohoo! Thanks a lot for having me, man.
Thanks,
It was
boss.
fun.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.